Wow,
Yeah,
just amazed.
it
And
is.
new voters and people that are fighting.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Good morning. My name is Tony Robles. I'm the host of the People's Poet podcast, also known as Triple P. And we'd like to welcome you this morning to a discussion with communities of color in NC District 11 between community leaders of the communities of color and congressional candidate Mo Davis running in congressional district number 11. You might ask, who am I? I am a local writer. I was named the Carl Sandburg Writer in Residence. However, my tenure has just ended, so it was good while it lasted. We have representatives with us this morning from the different communities of color in District 11. Representatives from the African American community, the Latino, Latina, and Latinx community, and also the Asian Pacific Islander API community. This is a very critical election. Um, we're living in a time of pandemic with communities of color being disproportionately impacted by its severity. I want to start off really by bringing in some words from the late Maya Angelou, the poet Maya Angelou, who said that we all should know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry, and that we must understand that all of the threads of the tapestry are equal in value, no matter what their color. So I'm going to share a short PowerPoint with you that will give an introduction of our participants in this morning's discussion with candidate Davis. So let me get my screen here. Again, discussion with NC-11 communities of color. I'm your moderator and host, Tony Robles. Let me hit the slideshow here. Let's see here, slideshow. Okay, let the slideshow begin. Our first guest, or among our panelists, will be Crystal Cawley, and she is the founder of the Black History Collective of Henderson County and Black Business Network of Western North Carolina. Another panelist is Florence Albaugh. She is an educator with 50 years experience. She was born in the Philippines, grew up in Ohio, and resides in Etowah. Sergio Fernandez is executive director of El Centro of Henderson County. He will be speaking on issues that impact the Latino Latinx community. Amina Zia, founder of Blue Ridge Consulting, specializing in social impact and development of representation and community development. Also, Joshua Williams. Joshua is a small business owner, and he's also a military veteran. And last but not least, Mo Davis, candidate, 11th Congressional District here, Western North Carolina. And the way we formatted this is that we are going to have our community members speak to issues that are of importance to their particular community. And then we will engage with Mo Davis as to his thoughts regarding these various issues. So without further ado, we'd like to start off and welcome Crystal Cawley to speak with us about the African American community and things that she's seeing. Crystal, good morning. Okay, we need to have you turn on your mic.
Okay, can
Okay,
you hear
gotcha.
me now?
Loud and clear, loud and clear.
Gotcha.
Great.
Yeah, so Crystal, we need to, I think you wanted to talk about historical preservation and Black business. So, we're going to give each panel member, roughly 5 minutes to kind of go over that. So the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. I'm a proud member of the African American community here in Hendersonville, North Carolina. I'm a native here. I do believe that African American preservation for Henderson County is vital because the history here is beautiful. It's very enriching and empowering for all people. So I did create the Black History Collective of Henderson County, North Carolina, and we use history that has usually been passed down orally. And my goal is to put this history on a canvas and to teach our young generation the history through artwork and art exhibitions. It's very important because we are a really great county here, the best county here in Western North Carolina. Whereas Black Business Network of Western North Carolina, which was created in 2016 to shed the light on minority businesses that may not have the visibility that they need. It's also a network that we use to have empowerment as well, and economic empowerment for the professionals here. And I'm very happy to do both projects.
And, we very much appreciate your work and we know the importance of it. I think, the history of the African-American community has to be something that is looked at more and honored. And I think, this is an issue of equity as well, because we want the Black community to stay here. And we know that gentrification and other issues, have a very, very severe impact on the Black community. And, that's a part of what Maya Angelou was saying about being a part of the tapestry of a community. What holds community together is history and culture and those things. So Crystal, thank you very much for that. We're going to move on to Florence Albaugh. Now, Florence is she's an educator. You've been an educator for about 50 years, and you have some very, very definite and very strong feelings about diversity and inclusivity. So please, go ahead, and if you can unmute the floor. Oh, yeah, Florence, take it away.
Thank you, Tony, and welcome, Mo, and I'm glad to see you again.
Thank you.
And yes, I am an educator, and I've taught anywhere from preschool all the way up to high school. And also, I've served on the U.S. Civil Rights Advisory Committee for over 20 years. And I also have a nonprofit that we serve Filipinos in the Philippines who are in dire need, as well as we are starting this year a scholarship for local Henderson County school students. And so I will be addressing that amongst other things, and look forward to hopefully getting you in office, because I'm also on running for the school board. So I hope you get there. And I would like to know how things are and how can we change the dynamics of education on the state level, so that it helps minorities, and not just Asians, but minorities of color have better and equal representation. And I welcome you, and I thank you and everyone on the panel, Amina, Crystal, Grameen, and thank you, Tony, for doing this.
Oh yeah, no problem. And Florence, it's interesting, that Filipino American History Month is in the month of October, and this is the very last day of Filipino American History Month. And I'm so glad that you can be a part of this discussion, Florence, because education is what we need. Education really is the glue that kind of holds society together. And the more we know about each other and our diversity and the things that we contribute as community, the stronger our communities are, particularly in knowing the history of our communities. Going back to what Crystal's talking about, much of her work is, talking about the history of African Americans in North Carolina, and that just adds to the strength of the community. So thank you so much. Amina, I know you're there and you're waiting with bated breath. We'll go ahead and we'll give the floor to you.
Thank you, Tony. Good morning, everyone. I am very excited to be here today in conversations, regarding our communities. I'm very appreciative of conversations like these because, these conversations are what bind us together to our place in our area and with the people, especially those outside of our network. Today, my focus in dialogue will be more about the financial growth of our district and the need for an equitable inclusion of communities of color so that we can foster empowerment and ownership. So I'm looking forward to the discussion with all our community leaders today, especially with our congressional candidate, Colonel Davis. Thank you.
Amina, thank you so much. And I'm so glad I'm becoming I'm becoming somewhat of a Zoom expert here. That that we haven't lost transmission. Josh Williams is a young man I got a chance to meet a few weeks ago, and he's a military veteran, and he's also well, he's part of the African American community. I believe he was born and raised in Hendersonville, and he is also he's a military veteran and a small business owner. So so Josh, welcome to our panel discussion. Hello. Okay, Josh, we see your name there. We know we can feel your spirit. We can feel your spirit. You're here. Okay. Well, Josh, I tell you what, we need you to connect with us. And let me see here. He doesn't have his thing on. Well, anyway, it looks like he's connecting through the audio right now. So I think we got him. Josh, are you there? Josh, how you doing?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh,
Pretty good. How you doing?
Loud and clear. So the floor, if not the video screen, is yours right now. So so go ahead and take it away.
Okay. Well, to introduce myself, I'm Josh Williams. Current local business owner, J. Williams Financial Services. I am a veteran as well. I am active within the community. That's pretty much.
Yeah,
Thank
Josh.
you for allowing me to be a part of this.
Yeah, I think
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. I think when we had met last time, you had spoken. You had some points that you had to make about opportunities in business, jobs, and then also there were some issues as far as being a veteran. Did you want to speak maybe a little bit to that?
Well, yeah, I have issues as far as the veterans are concerned, as far their health care insurance, because not every veteran gets the opportunity to be a part of the VA hospital, and for those that are connected and they get turned away. So I had a few questions as far as what plans are to better those conditions. I know I have a good VA hospital here in Asheville, but again, some veterans aren't really connected, and they don't really receive the benefit. So I had a concern as far as that goes.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Your audio is Josh. Your sound is dipping in and out a little bit. It's a little bit distorted. It might be because of your microphone. But as I understand it, you wanted to address issues of veterans in terms of health benefits and I guess working and just just where veterans are in society and how they can access certain things that they need in order to survive. Is that correct?
Right, and also not just the services for medical or beneficial, more things such as like other resources to help us as well.
Okay, all right. Again, the microphone on your end is distorted a little bit, so I don't know if it has to do with your online connection or maybe where your computer is placed in your house, but we're getting the gist of what you're saying, and thank you for adding that. We appreciate it. Let's see here. So anyway, communities of color, again, going back to what Maya Angelou said, it's a patchwork, a tapestry where, we're all the sum of equal parts, and we're, in the pandemic, we're in a very crucial election right now. I want to open it up to Mo Davis. He's listened to some of what we've had to say briefly, and you'll get into a discussion on, Mo, what it is that, what your vision is, and in particular, how your vision is going to impact for the better communities of color, what the discourse is going to be, and what your vision is for that for our community here in Western North Carolina.
Well, thank you. And Tony, thank you for putting this together. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah,
And,
you're welcome. You're welcome.
It's a real privilege to get to talk with everybody this morning. And boy, the election day is coming up in a hurry. Today is the last day for early voting. So if anybody hadn't voted yet, you have until 3 o'clock today. And you can do same day registration up through 3 o'clock today. So I know some folks may be thinking, well, heck, if I haven't registered, I just can't do anything. And that's not true as long as you get it done today. So I'm hoping everybody, the turnout so far has just been incredible, not just here, but nationwide. I don't know if you saw where the state of Texas has already had more votes cast in the early voting than they had in the entire election in 2016. So I think that bodes well, but we won't know until it's over. But there are a number of, this is the whitest district in the state of North Carolina. But there are communities that are part of this district that we ought to be rowing together rather than rowing apart. I don't know if you saw, there was a headline this morning in the Charlotte Observer, if I can get it to come up here, about how my opponent is polarizing this district. Because if you've seen, he made headlines last week with a local journalist that he made some racist remarks about. And he's had this long history throughout the campaign of pandering to white nationalism and being divisive, not unifying. And we're at a point in time where we need to be pulling together and not pulling apart. There are other communities we could have included today. Like, one community that's unique here in our district is the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. Which is a large part of the western end of the district, and another community that is suffered from discrimination. I didn't realize until recently that they weren't allowed to register to vote until 1946, which is not that long ago. So, we need to make sure that we're, as Joe Biden has repeatedly stressed, we're the United States, and we need to be united in this district because we're behind on so many things, from healthcare to education to poverty to broadband, that those issues impact every community. And if we could work together, I think we could solve a lot of our problems. So I'm really, I'm hopeful that Tuesday things are going to turn out well. And my pledge has been to go to Washington and represent the entire district, not just people that like me or people that look like me. I think one of the most important lessons I learned in the military is that the only thing that matters is who can you depend on? And there is no demographic that has a lock on virtue. I grew up down in Shelby in Cleveland County at a time where the courthouse had 2 water fountains, and the county fair was 2 weeks, and you knew which week was your week and which week wasn't your week. And when you grow up in that kind of environment, you take it for granted that the whole world is that way. And I think the most important thing I learned in the military is how narrow-minded that perception was, and that it takes all of us. The world would be a pretty boring place if the only people I associated with were people exactly like me. So it's that diversity that, as Maya Angelou said, that makes us so rich. And I know, I think all of us have met before and had a chance to talk, and there is no one thing we can do that's going to solve all the problems. It's a series of doing one thing here and one thing there, and putting those things together to make a difference. Because there's just not one thing we can do that's going to fix all the problems we have, but it does include healthcare, education, and opportunity, and making sure that everyone has an equal opportunity. That doesn't guarantee an equal outcome, but you ought to have an equal opportunity to live up to whatever your dreams are. And so that's what I want to do in Washington, is make sure that Western North Carolina moves into the 21st century, and that we move forward together. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning, and hope things turn out well on Tuesday, and we can continue having these dialogues afterwards when I'm actually in a position to affect some change. And again, I think that's a big difference. If you're talking to folks from your communities about their decision in voting, my opponent, in addition to being a racist and a sexual predator and a habitual liar, will also be in the minority in Congress. As a member of the Republican Party in the House, he would be powerless do anything that's beneficial for the district. So it's advantageous having someone, number one, that knows what they're doing, and number two, that would be in the majority and able to actually accomplish things that are beneficial for the district. So hopefully we can get there next Tuesday, win this thing, and we can continue this dialogue and work on making Western North Carolina and our country better for everyone.
You know, part of the right, part of what they've done is really demonizing communities, and the Latinx community, the Latino community, has really suffered in that. We know that the Latino Latinx community is very vital to this state. I mean, I look at some of the census figures. It looks like the Latino population in North Carolina is something like almost 900,000. I want to just get your thoughts on that, because there's been so much just overt hatred. There's been, you know, it just out there.
Right.
How you plan on addressing this, because you know, the way it's going right now has been untenable. It's not working. We need to make sure that folks are protected. I mean, after all, you know, we have a rich history of, you know, we have these workers that are here that are putting food on our tables, you know, really,
Right.
and but are being severely impacted by COVID. If you can, because, you know, we wanted to have Sergio here. I believe he's having some kind of technical difficulty. So I want to bring that to the table. Sure. and get your feelings on that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that, you know, there are a number of issues that we have repeatedly kicked the can down the road on, like healthcare, but immigration is another one where for too long we've just, you know, continued to kick the can down the road, and we need to address it in a comprehensive way and bring some certainty to. I feel particularly bad for the DACA kids that constantly have hanging over their head that threat of you know, being shipped out of the, you know, really the only country that they've ever known. So I would like to see us have a, you know, a comprehensive discussion and come up with comprehensive legislation once and for all to resolve this. And you're right. I mean, the other side is really, you know, demonizing people, creating this narrative of us and them is a common thread you see throughout. I can hear, like, for me, I was a federal government employee, which used to be considered an honorable profession, but this administration has, you know, demonized federal employees and really demoralized the federal workforce by creating, you know, this perception that the deep state is out to get rid of President Trump. But so on the issue of immigration, there, you know, again, it's, I think, a very sharp contrast between me and my opponent. You know, in one of the debates, he said he was a firm supporter of DACA because he thought if you were born here, you ought to get to stay here. And that's not DACA, that's birthright citizenship. DACA is when your parents brought you here as a child and you've only known living here in America. So it's a totally different story. You know, he, in August, was down at the border wall, you know, posing with a gentleman that was supposedly building a private, you know, privately funding the border wall. About 2 weeks after Mr. Cawthorn was down there, that individual was indicted by the Trump administration's Justice Department on felony fraud charges for bilking people out of the money they were donating and putting it in his own pocket. But Mr. Cawthorn said we need a border wall to keep out undocumented immigrants. But in the same debate, a few minutes later, he said that our employers here in the district, built in the building trades and in agriculture in particular, were dependent on the cheap labor provided by undocumented immigrants. And it's kind of like you can't have it both ways. Right. So several things I'd like to see us do. I believe in border security, but I don't think a vanity wall or vanity fence is the right path to get there. It's a huge waste of money. I think it's manpower and technology. But I would like to see, I've got friends, I was a judge at the Department of Labor, but I've got colleagues that are immigration judges, and they're just overwhelmed. I mean, there are people showing up at the border that have legitimate asylum claims, and they're entitled to a prompt and fair hearing to adjudicate their claims. But instead, because of a lack of resources, they're being turned away and told to come back in a year for a hearing. So I'd like to see more resources devoted to make that process more timely and effective than it is right now. I'd like to see more of a focus too on, Donald Trump is, it's just public record that over the years has hired dozens and dozens of undocumented immigrants because you can pay them a low wage and treat them unfairly, and there's not anything they can do about it. And when they got caught, it was the employee, not the employer, that got in trouble and had to bear the consequences. So I would like to see more emphasis on holding employers accountable. I believe there should be a robust e-verify system. And if employers rely on that in good faith, then I don't think they should be held accountable. But too often they're ignoring that. They just want the cheap labor that they can exploit. And if they're doing that, we ought to be holding employers accountable, punish them instead of the powerless. And I think you'd see a whole different attitude on the labor issue. As I said, I was a judge at the Department of Labor, and I adjudicated H-2A and H-2B visa cases, which I think is a program that we need to expand. I think I can't recall any trial I ever did. Part of the program is the employer has to advertise an attempt to recruit local American workers for those jobs before they can go out and recruit foreign workers. And without exception, every one of them said, look, I would love to hire American workers, but every year when I advertise, I'll get 2 or 3 guys show up, and 2 of them can't pass the drug test, and the third one will show up for 2 days and quit. And the foreign workers are coming in year after year after year, and they're appreciative of the work, and they do a good job. And so we need to be promoting that program.
Yes.
And I'm certainly a believer in DACA. We need to come to some finality and make it clear that these are Americans.
Yes.
And get that, that cloud's got to quit hanging over their heads. So
Yes.
again, I think it takes a comprehensive package to do that, but those are things that I think we need to take on early and get this done. And hopefully the Democrats will have the White House, the Senate, and the House, and we shouldn't be bashful about using the authority we've got, and let's put this to rest once and for all.
I'd like to welcome, thank you, Mo. I'd like to welcome Sergio Fernandez of El Centro. Thanks for joining us. We'll bring you into this conversation for sure, okay? Because we're just touching on many issues. Amina, I want to bring you into this because I know that you do a lot of policy work, and in terms of trying to get equity and inclusion, in terms of policy and passing laws. Can you address that and what your feelings are in terms of how we can work with candidate Davis should he become the congressional representative of the district?
Absolutely. Thank you, Tony. And thank you, Colonel Davis, for your comments. So, before I touch on that, Tony, I would like to just add something about immigration really quickly. Here in Mills River, I live in Mills River, we have farms around us. I have noticed particularly that, we've had crop over the last couple of months that is just, there's no one to pick our crop here. I have talked to farmers who are, talking about how we need to talk about immigration because, we need to look at our district. We don't need to get caught up in polarizing the issues from a national standpoint. When we're talking about our district, the needs of our district are very, very different than mainstream America in some capacities. So, for example, when we talk about immigration, when we talk about financial inclusion, when we talk about some of these other issues, when we talk about, policing and things, we need to really look at our district and see what is the larger conversation and how does that relate to us here specifically? So I just wanted to make that comment. But I do want to talk about, something that is very important to my work and also to the communities of color is, so we realize that across the communities, in various sectors, equity is severely lacking, right? There's no doubt. So nationally, we have seen that there's been terrific progress in the representation of women, particularly in senior roles. But when we compare that to our local and regional data, we see that there are many gaps in racial and ethnic equity, right? So equity, we know, translates translates into empowerment and ownership within our communities. And one of the most important areas of very needed and necessary inclusion is the financial landscape. So representation in the financial services directly correlates with the control over capitals and assets, which means power and influence over markets and businesses and entrepreneurial landscape in general. And that's how we can step towards policy and, and get the people of color in those stakeholder positions to have an influence and impact policy. We still have a lot of work left to do to ensure that people of color have equal opportunities to be successful, right? So to ensure that there is a viable access for people of color to create generational wealth, right? So one of the most easiest and important ways to do that is through home ownership. We need to ensure within our district that we are able to provide home loans to our communities of color, period, right? And then we need to talk about, are those home loans available at reasonable rates and conditions and so forth? And, since the demographics of our country and our district are changing, we have a lot of people moving into our district. We have a lot of younger families moving into our district. So we just need to make sure that we are, including them within all kinds of segments of society. And, specifically, Colonel Davis, I would like to get your feedback on the financial growth of the future of our district here, specifically as it pertains towards a very collective growth, to make sure that all residents are represented within any sort of growth that we talk about. Because, your opponent continues to talk about how he is the representation of the new generation, of the younger generation, the generation that is now starting to, accept jobs and start young families and so forth. But, what your opponent forgets is that, when he speaks, he's not speaking to all residents of the district. He's only speaking to he's speaking to the majority of the district, but again, not all districts. So I would like your feedback on that.
Yeah, let me address the first point you brought up about what you're seeing there around Mills River. When I was in the military, I was stationed in Alabama, and Alabama passed a very draconian bill for undocumented immigrants and forcing many to choose to leave the state. And they were all the good old boys were patting themselves on the back for passing this bill until the next spring when the crops came in. And there was nobody everything was starting to rot because local folks didn't want those jobs. And they realized that they shot themselves in the foot by, passing legislation that pushed out the immigrant community. So yeah, that sounds like what you're seeing over in your area. So, I mean, these are folks that are providing vital services to us that, we just can't exist. We've got to figure this out and have some resolution that's fair for everybody. But on the equity point, yeah, I agree. Certainly I agree that we need to be encouraging everyone to participate in the process and to be entrepreneurial and to, like, I said earlier, I think everybody should have an equal opportunity. That doesn't mean everybody's going to get an equal outcome, but they ought to have the chance. And it starts with education. We've got to make sure that everyone in this district, regardless of any descriptor, has the opportunity for a good education that gives them the foundation for the future. The other side likes to talk a lot about defund the police, which I think was a terrible label for a notion that I agree with, but the label has just, been horrible. But the other side's been on an effort to defund education. Over the last decade, just a steady erosion of support for public education. I was in Cherokee County not long ago and spoke with a lady that's a resident and who's an educator, and she's teaching in Georgia. I mean, she can drive 15 minutes and be in Georgia and make $10,000 a year more than she can teaching in North Carolina. So I'm a big believer in public education, and I'm proud to be endorsed by the North Carolina Association of Educators. And I want to make sure that all of our kids have that opportunity to get that foundation. I also want to see, we provide public education from first grade through 12th. I would like to extend that to include 2 years of community college. I view education as an investment, not an expense. I mean, studies show that the more education you have, the higher your earnings, which means the more you put back in taxes and in spending in your community. So I view it as an investment. So I'd like to see everyone have a chance to get an associate's degree. Where I'm sitting right now, my wife and I just finished, we didn't do it, but we built a house, and we've been here for 17 weeks today. But in talking with my builder, he was saying that finding folks that have the training and certification, plumbing, electrical, solar, those skilled trades that don't require a 4-year degree. They require some technical training and certification. And those are jobs that are $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year jobs. That, when I was growing up, I'm 62. So when I was growing up, the notion was if you didn't get a 4-year degree, you couldn't be successful. And I don't think that paradigm is true today. So I'd love to see us provide an opportunity for folks, our kids coming up in Western North Carolina to get the opportunity to get their associate's degree. I'd like to create a program. Another big issue is healthcare access. I'd like to create a program here at Western Carolina and Appalachian State. They both have nursing programs. I'd like to have a more robust nurse practitioner and physician assistant program that we would pay for. So when I was in the military, when I went back to school, for every year of school, I had a 2-year commitment to the Air Force. Now, I'd like to see us provide opportunities for our young folks to go to one of our state-supported schools and get an NP or a PA degree in return for a service commitment in our district. Because again, those are good jobs that pay well, they're essential skills, and it helps fill a need. On housing, I want a more robust, there are a number of different loan programs, FHA, VA. I'd like to see, I've talked about, I'd like to see a program for first responders, whether it's firefighters, law enforcement, or EMTs, that too often they can't live in the community that they serve. So I know, I live in Asheville, and I know for a lot of our folks in law enforcement and firefighters, they live elsewhere because they can't afford to live in Asheville. It's such a high cost of living. So for a policeman, for instance, they'll drive in, put on the uniform, do their job here in Asheville, then get in the car and go back to wherever they're living. I would like to see a loan program akin to the VA loans for first responders. I think part of the problem we have, the friction between the community and law enforcement, is that many in law enforcement aren't part of the community because they can't afford to live there. But I'd also like to see, more opportunity. There's a big article in our paper not long ago about the shortage of housing for working class folks in this district. That you're getting folks, there's a big influx of people. The housing market right here is booming, but it's houses that are $500,000 and up. It's people that are finding they can telework, and if you can telework, why not come somewhere beautiful and live and take advantage of that opportunity? But it's not helping the folks that are residents that grew up here, that $1 million house just isn't feasible. So we need more effort to encourage developers. I think it's understandable why the developers are targeting that high-end market, because it's booming and there's more profit in it, but we need to give them incentives to take care of ordinary folks in the district as well. And that's going to take an effort. From the federal level, I want to do all I can to help with making affordable, loan programs available, but it's going to take zoning, here at the local level, to do that as well. I was really disheartening. You saw President Trump, this is one of the race cards he's playing, where he's opposed to, low income housing in the suburbs. He's playing that now as a card that I saved the suburbs because people of color aren't going to be moving into your communities. And that's just wrong. So yes. I guess that's kind of a long-winded answer. There's a whole lot of things we got to work on. Yeah. There's no one thing we can do that's going to fix the problem, but we've got to take that broad approach and work on all those things.
Thank you, Amina, for posing that question. To the people that are listening or watching on Facebook Live, welcome. A very, very good discussion. Please be sure if you have questions, do put them in the comments. Sergio Fernandez is the executive director of El Centro. I'd like to bring you in here and just get your perspective on this discussion, Sergio. And if you can unmute your mic, that would be great. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm sorry I was a little bit late today. I'm working on the Board of Elections in Hendersonville for people to make sure that every vote counts and there is no any intimidation from either side. We're a nonprofit, no partisan, so we just want everything to go as smooth as possible. That's the reason I'm in my car right now. I just want to thank Mo Davis. I appreciate you meeting with us. Um, I have a couple things I wanted to talk, but because I came in late, I'm not sure if you already talked about this. But you're going to be in a position, you're going to be in a place in the federal level that is going to hopefully make an impact for all of us down here. I lived in different places in the United States. I lived in New York, I lived in Miami, and now I'm in Hendersonville. Hendersonville is its own country sometimes when it comes to racism and when it comes to intimidation. It comes from intimidation for people that shouldn't be. For example, the police department or the sheriff department. We have an agreement with the sheriff that says that this is called 287G, that says that anybody can act as an immigrant. Anybody in the sheriff department can act as an immigrant officer. We have had that for 12 years now, since 2008. That has alienated our people, especially the Spanish community, the immigrant community. So we are seeing a rise in our communities of crime. It's a prophecy that is fulfilling itself, as he put in his first campaign, the Bad Hombres, because we are not calling the police. For anything, because whatever happens in our houses is better than what will happen in our country. In this country, if we get some kind of crime happen to us, we can deal with that more than what we can deal in our countries. Unfortunately, it's been growing and the gap is been getting bigger and bigger. So my question for you, Mo, I have a couple of questions, is what can you do to eliminate the 287G agreement? You're in a position in a very special place when you get elected, hopefully, that is can fight for us who we don't have a loud voice. We are loud, we will be loud in our vote once we do everything we can. But right now, there is so much intimidation that those who can vote are afraid for the retaliation for their parents, for example, that might don't have the documentation to stay in this country. So what can you do? That's one of the questions. What can you do to eliminate 27G from your position? Two, I have this feeling that unfortunately in our lifetime, the systematic racism won't be done and won't be over, but it has to start somewhere. It has to start. We have to lay the grounds somewhere where we can say, well, we look back and racism was eliminated thanks from that law or thanks that they passed this thing in there. And it has to start somewhere. Is there something that you are thinking about doing for people that has been here for 5, 10 years, that we have roots here already? I myself, I have 3 kids and a wife, and I don't have the problem of not going back to my country. I have documents, but the people just like me that came exactly at the same time that I came, they can't do that. They cannot go back home. So do you have a plan for immigration? It's very important in this country. It's 12 million immigrants in this country. And most of the people that came here, of the 12 million immigrants that don't have documentation, they have roots. They don't want to go back to the country. Do you have any plans for us? And again, thank you for giving us the opportunity. Tony, thank you for being here. Appreciate it and doing this for us. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Sergio, and thank you for what, you folk at what El Centro is doing. And that's a vital service over in your community. I came and spoke at the Henderson County Commission against the 287G program. And for folks that are watching, if you're not familiar with it, it's a federal program that essentially make sheriff's departments into an adjunct ICE to enforce immigration law. I may be wrong. I can't think of any other aspect of any other federal function that we subcontract out to local law enforcement. You know, for instance, the IRS. You know, we're not, we don't have an IRS program where the sheriff's department, when they pull you over, check your tax records. So I don't see the sense in carving out this one area to make our local, or to ask our local sheriff's departments to perform a federal function. The point I made when I went to the meeting was to me, it's no benefit to Henderson County. It's all symbolism and no substance. You know, if you're a bigoted person, then, you know, you can say, hey, you know, my community is fighting, you know, illegal immigration. But there's 17 counties that make up this district. There are only 3 that are part of the 287G program, and Henderson, you know, is one of the 3. But all it does, it provides very limited resources to the sheriff's department. Essentially, it's the IT equipment where the sheriff's department can tap into the ICE, you know, network. And they pay for the training. That means that ICE pays to train the officers, but your community is paying their salary and their, you know, per diem and all the other. So it's a money losing program. It's costing Henderson County money and not achieving. I mean, if you look at the pluses and minuses, you know, the scale tips very clearly on the minus side, other than it just being a symbolic negative. And I think particularly during COVID-19, it's highlighted too, you know, the importance of people being able to feel like they can come in, whether it's going to law enforcement, like you were talking about, the hesitancy to report, you know, when bad things are happening, because the consequence to you could be worse than just sucking it up and keeping quiet. But on the health front, you know, during COVID-19, you know, folks shouldn't be in fear about going to get treatment that is going to end up in, you know, something even worse for them. So, you know, again, we did talk a little before you got on. We did kind of go through some immigration stuff, but I want to see, you know, and you and I have had this discussion before too, about there's got to be we can't, you know, anybody that has any common sense knows we can't deport 12 million people. And it would be devastating to our economy, as well as just morally wrong. So, and I talked about it, we've got to quit kicking the can down the road. We've got to come up with a permanent solution so this cloud doesn't keep hanging over people's heads. So I think you'd mentioned the number like 10 years. If someone had been here for 10 years, that, you know, they would be eligible for permanent residence. You know, something kind of like Reagan did, you know, a number of years ago. So, you know, we need to have that discussion. We need to come up with, you know, quit kicking the can down the road and let's solve this. So I'm hopeful that when we have a majority, you know, the White House and the Senate and the House won't be bashful about exercising the authority we've got, and we put an end to this lingering uncertainty over immigration. You know, another thing, I guess while I'm thinking about it, is one of my commitments has been that I want the folks that are going to be in the district staff and in the Washington, D.C. staff to be reflective of the community. I don't want a bunch of old white guys that look like me filling all those positions. So, you know, I know there's an African-American woman that's already committed to be one of the field representatives, and there's a member of the Latinx community that we're working on. So I want to make sure that the folks that are working to represent this district are reflective of the district too.
Mo, you're not that old though. What are you, 62? You said
What's
you're
that?
60. You're 62, right? You're not that old.
Yes. Well, I don't know. Well, my opponent just posted something on Twitter saying that, you know, I'm an old man that's out of touch. So,
Oh man,
yeah, I never thought 62 was that old, but.
You know, it's good that we're having this discussion because, you know, all of these, you know, all these dots are being connected. Now you taught at an HBC, historically Black college. You taught at Howard. One of the alum at Howard was Associate Justice Thurgood Marshall.
Yes.
You know about his impact in terms of civil rights, in terms of, you know, what he was trying to do about the police and the police malfeasance that was happening. So I want to find out, you know, with that type of background, being in that particular university and teaching law, you taught law, you were an associate professor, is that correct?
Yes.
What kind of lens or frame are you looking at justice in terms of that background? And, you know, how is that going to lead or kind of be a beacon or a guiding light in terms of the policies that you try to put forth, insofar as some of the committees that you might end up, you know, being on, how that's going to be a guide to you?
Yeah, you know, in addition to teaching at Howard, my law degree is from North Carolina Central University School of Law. And North Carolina Central is part of the HBCU system as well. So I've had 7 years in the HBCU community, either as a student or a member of the faculty. And, you know, I recognize that doesn't mean I've walked in those shoes to where I can be 100% empathetic and understanding, but I think it does give me, you know, I've walked next to the people that walk in those shoes, and I think it does give me a unique perspective. Now, I've told the story before. I don't know if I've told you folks, but when I was up in Washington after I retired from the military, you know, I'd fought the Bush administration over the issue of torture at Guantanamo when I was chief prosecutor, and I really kind of alienated or made the Republicans angry. And then I worked during the Obama administration. I was working for Congress, and I wrote an op-ed that was critical of President Obama. It was in the Wall Street Journal, and I got fired for writing the op-ed. And so now I'd made the Democrats mad. And it was really difficult to find, when you're in Washington and you've made the Republicans and the Democrats mad at you, it makes finding a job difficult. And so I was on unemployment for about 6 months. And I got a call one day from a lady that said she was the executive assistant to Vernon Jordan, you know, one of the last remaining of the real, you know, civil rights leaders from the 60s, and said he wanted to see me. So he's an attorney in DC, and you know, he's getting up in age now, but I went to see him, and he said, look, somebody told me about you and what you've done, and I admire it. And I did some research on my own, and what can I do to help you? And I said, look, you know, I've made the Democrats and the Republicans mad. So, you know, it's difficult to find a job. And he picked up the phone and called Kurt Smoke, who was the dean of the law school at Howard University, and said, I'm sending somebody over there to meet you. And that's how I spent the next 4 years on the faculty at Howard, where I was accepted with open arms. And so that's one promise I make to the African-American community is I remember who took me in when nobody else would. And I'll never forget that. So I think, and again, you know, as I've been talking about, I think there are a lot of, you know, there's no one thing we can do, but there's a lot of little things we can do that I think will make a positive difference. One is on in the area of criminal justice. And to be fair, this is an area where I think Madison Cawthorn and I are in agreement, is on the legalization of marijuana and the expungement of records. For folks that are being, you know, we have a lot of folks who are being held back because they've got an arrest or conviction on their record for a marijuana offense. And drug enforcement tends to have a disproportionate impact on communities of color. So I think, you know, again, we both support legalization, expungement of records. And I think we should be treating, you know, I mentioned before, the defund the police, I thought was a bad label or a good notion. And the notion is that we ought to be reimagining law enforcement and what are the roles and missions our communities want their law enforcement professionals to perform. And I think we have an opportunity. I think there are things that we've put on law enforcement's plate, like dealing with mental health issues, alcoholism, and drug addiction, that I think should be treated as healthcare problems, not criminal justice problems. And those are also areas where there's more of an impact on minority communities with law enforcement in those areas. So I think there's an opportunity to little steps like that, I was really encouraged. I don't know if you saw President Obama when he spoke. I think it was the first campaign address he did a week or so ago on behalf of Biden and Harris. But he talked about, and I've seen this too, where, you know, there's some folks that want the perfect solution right this minute. And I wish, we could do that. But President Obama said, we've got to win this election and make some forward steps, and then win the next election and make some more steps to get to perfect. We can't get it in one shot. So that's what my hope is to be able to get us on that path to making those steps that are going to lead to a better solution. I was really pleased. I got to go to, when Kamala Harris was here, I got to go meet with her really briefly, but what we got to talk about was she's a graduate of the Howard University School of Law, where I was on the faculty. Now, she graduated before I did, but we were talking because some of my colleagues were there when she was a student. So I know Howard is really proud to potentially have the first African-American female vice president in the history of the country be a graduate of Howard University.
Mo, thank you so much for meeting with us. Our time this morning on Facebook Live is from about 10 to 11, so we are closing in on the 11 o'clock hour. Want to really say thank you and really express the deepest gratitude to Crystal Cawley, the Black History Collective, and the Black Business Collective. Also Josh Williams, homegrown folks that have deep roots, African-American community, not just African-American community, but community, just people. Also Florence Albaugh, again, Filipino-American History Month, but that's inclusive of everybody. Amina Zia, of course, your spirit and your fire, we need more of that. Sergio Fernandez, goes without saying, the work that you're doing, being out there, making sure that people ain't getting intimidated to vote, that you're out there doing the work that needs to be done. And of course, Colonel Davis, much luck to you in this. A very crucial time right now, crucial election. Please get out and vote if you haven't already done so. Be sure to wear your mask, social distance, be safe. This whole thing with the pandemic, it's, certain people have been framing it as an issue of rights. We all have rights, but when you wear your mask, you're looking out for each other. It's an issue of obligations as opposed to rights. What's your obligation? What is what is your obligation to your fellow citizen, to your fellow community member? So again, thank you so much. And it's good to be out here with folks, and for those who have watched this morning on Facebook Live, there, you can replay it and repeat it. I guess you can hit the rewind button. You can look at it tonight while eating your popcorn and doing whatever. So again, thank you so much. And thank you to the Mo Davis campaign, Chris Judeman, Deborah Wagner, Graham, I guess the name is Graham McGuffick. Okay. I don't like mispronouncing anybody's name because they did that to me when I was in school, ripped my name to shreds, say Mr. Robles, Mr. Rubbles, Mr. Barney Rubble. No, Robles. And it took me a long time to be able to roll my own R's. So anyway, again, do likewise, go out, be safe, and vote. And Colonel Davis, thank you so much. And to our panelists, take care, much love, and be safe.
Thanks, Tony.
All right now.